Welcome to video 2 of Indie Resources Ajax and JavaScript tutorial. What I want to do is we're going to go through coding now, but I want to go over a couple things real quick. If you guys are looking for the source, just go to indieresource.com, go to the forums, and actually under the tutorials I've made a little sticky that is it'll just say JavaScript and Ajax, video tuts, and everything will be underneath there. So you guys should be able to find it pretty easily. The only thing I'm going to say real quick on that is there is a license agreement in there. It's real simple. I just, we don't do any of this for money. I don't put any ads on the websites whatsoever. We're not expecting any money. I have a donation button, but to be honest with you, I've only got one donation in a year, so salutations to the guy that did that. But it's not a big deal. We're not out to get money. And so, but what I do want to cover with this is that you guys can use this however you want. You just can't use my logo in there, the name, and you need to, if you're going to use it, at least give us some props, some way, maybe a link on your website or something, just so other people can find it. Especially with this one, I mean, I've done so little with this, as far as just give you a template that nobody's really going to be able to copy your game anyway. There's a lot of work that's got to still be done with this. But anyway, to continue on, let's actually look at some code now. If you notice, the index.php is our first page that we go to. It's pretty basic, and if you don't know what any of this stuff is, then like I said, go back to my other tutorials, my beginning tutorials. If you don't know how to set up WAMP, they teach you about PHP. Do that first, and that way you don't get confused here. But basically, you notice a lot of this stuff's the same as what I had before. I'm just getting the player information. Then we kind of go into some JavaScript. I'm setting the first, and basically what I'm doing is on body onload equals a night, and whenever the page loads, and that's basically whenever the body of the page loads, run this function, and this is the function. It's basically setting an interval for every, and it looks like it's 2 seconds, so maybe it's not on a 3-second tick, it's on a 2-second tick because those are milliseconds, to run travel, which is a function. Now the travel's not in this actual this page, because what we're doing is we're including it. We're fixing to include it. So to kind of move on, here's where we're including netmap.javascript. So it's just a file that has these functions in it that's being included, and we'll go to that next. And then I'm just putting the logos up there and setting up the page. Kind of putting in here just some real quick CSS. And then I'm in my panels. If you notice, the way this works is that I'm using tables, and I know people get aggravated about tables, but you can change it if you want. That's the way I'm doing it. This is basically a table that I put all the buttons in there with, and then you got a table here, a table here, and a table here that basically sets everything up, and it keeps everything in the center. And we'll go into the CSS here in a minute, in the actual page, and how I set those up. But you need to be able to pull some beginning stats from in the beginning of the game, and that's what I've done here as far as when you first load it up. And that's all this is doing here, is loading up the first stats. It's never going to go back and call these until you refresh the page, but you need to have some, in other words, when the page first loads up, you need to have some information there and not have to wait for that 3 seconds for it to pull it. So that's what that's doing, it's just pulling it. And then the next thing, here's where I'm creating all the multiple divs. It's doing a count to 659, and how I ended up on that 659 is just the way the board got set up. So you can actually change the size of your board. Just know that you'll just change your tags, and if you want to know what your tags look like, in other words, how many tags you got on there, you can actually go into the CSS and set for those tags, set the border to where it actually has a border there, and then it'll show you each tag, and you'll have it in there. And I'll do that here in a little bit to kind of show you guys how exactly that works, so you know how big to make your page. But mine ended up at 659. You can use that; it all works the same. So basically, all it's doing is you're creating an element, a div element, and you're wanting to give it a tag, and so the tag is going to be div and then whatever number you're on here. So it's div 1, div 2, div 3, and if you notice in the database, that's how it knows how to place it, because it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, and it continues to go across, and then it drops. And how I told it to drop was I just did a clear after so many, clear the float after so many, how many ever lined out to be equal there, and then it knows to drop a new line. It just keeps going all the way down, and in the database, that's what it's doing. So it knows to place halls at div 162 because that's where he's located. So let's see, where's he's at. So that's 162 right there. And actually that's not halls, that's test. Here's halls. So that's 162. That number right there that he's on, and if you notice, I just moved halls. So when we go back to the database, he should be 163 now once we refresh. And notice he's 163 now because I've made it to where it just continues to create a new. You continue to just move across the divs is all you're doing. I'm not actually using pixels to place everything. I'm using just little squares to basically put everything in. I ran into a lot of problems trying to make things pixel out right, because depending on the size of the screen, the type of browser you're using, if something else is behind you, the float wasn't setting up right, and so tags just made it that much easier because you can build so much more, because anything you can take squares out and not even allow anybody to move to the tag now, instead of actually trying to pixel out, okay, these 10 pixels you can't move in. Instead you just say, okay, div tag 200 is a hole, you can't move there, and then you say if div tag 200 equals this, then no move or whatever. So it made it a lot easier for me. But that's basically how the design of the actual movement goes. Let's go back to this page. So that's how I created the tags. It's basically just this for loop right here, and it's placing it in it's basically appending that tag to the map area. And the map area is just another div that I have created. And let's go ahead and open up the CSS real quick. And I'm using Adobe. You don't have to have Adobe to do this. I mean, the Code Lobster, if you look up Code Lobster through Google, they have a really good free coding that's really neat, a really coding program. I'm kind of gotten familiar with Adobe and I enjoy it, so I'm going to use it. But here's the map area right here. It's just 670 by 480, which the map area on here is going to be that square right here. So that's basically all it is. And so what it's doing is it's taking all those divs and appending it as a child to this big one, so none of the tags run out, and it's all part of this single page. It's part of this single table right here, because everything falls into that table. Okay, and then that ends our JavaScript. And now we just have our right panel, which is basically what I've done here is I've included rightpanel.php, but I've also created a div action text box, and you'll see in a minute what that is. We can actually set the action text box.html to whatever we want to say, and that's what I was doing whenever we were logging. Like whenever we'd go to Lumber, it would change it, and you just change the HTML that's right there. So that's basically index. Index is really short, and you're thinking, well, how can you do all this, on such a short page? But basically, it's what's in this included netmap.js that's going to be the biggest one, and we're going to do that in the next video. Just to kind of go through style.css real quick while we're. I've kind of did. I did and if you watch the Urban Realms videos that I did, I used almost the exact same setup to make it easier, because I wanted to create something really quick so I could get these videos out. And basically I just have a wrapper that wraps this whole page right here and centers it. That's how I got it centered, was just wrapping that whole tag there in between this wrapper. Margin left auto, margin right auto. That way it centers it in the width 100%. And of course you can change your font to whatever you want. The panel areas I set up, I've actually, that's how I just kind of got. I know this panel is not the prettiest thing in the world. It was just something I set up quick, but that's how I got that. The panels, I just use that as a background image, and it's kind of like in the Urban Realms what I did before, where it's just a picture that fades out, just a small strip, and then it just copies it basically. And then same thing with my right panel area, and then here's my action text box that I had before, and the logo is in the button. So the CSS is pretty short. So now we'll get into the actual JavaScript next.